Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I rise to contribute to this necessary debate about the motion placed before us. Stoic, unfeeling, uncompassionate. How long will these be the descriptions of those managing the state of affairs of this country? Mr. Speaker, it is a sad day indeed when the people of St. Kitts must now think, St. Kitts and Nevis, must now think, after the shortcomings of the debate this morning from the government side, to support or to justify the state of emergency and the extension of the state of emergency, that this might again be a political use of emergency powers rather than a needed management approach to the now face. As a member of parliament who sits on the opposition bench, contrary to what the Prime Minister, in his very unfortunate and regrettable and inaccurate statement, wanted to say to the rest of the public, I am not anti-vaccine. I never have been, nor will I ever be anti-vaccine, because I am not anti-science. However, I want to start by reading something from an academic and political research, which is, I think, would be useful to the government at this time. The post-confinement phase of COVID-19 will require that governments navigate very complex issues, ethical questions in particular, in terms of flattening the curve. Now, what we're saying is the principles at the heart of lockdowns and state of emergencies must always consider ramifications for the small man, the ramifications for people, for their lives, for their livelihoods, for education in particular, for tourism. And if we want to go as far as what the Honorable AG mentioned, for CPL and Culturama, but people's lives more so. And so, it is government chooses to enforce strong preference for policies that do not economize, but rather include prohibitions and coercive state of emergencies, that we need to focus on the most important agency at this time, people. So let's start with the science, Mr. Speaker. Now, when the community clusters, now the community spread, started, we were reliably informed, I suppose because it came from NIAC, that the situation at hand is being managed. There is no need for a 24-hour lockdown at this time, but things have changed. And because of delayed action on part of the government, we have been forced to declare a state of emergency. On Friday, when the nation was addressed, Mr. Speaker, we recorded 3, then 0, and most recently, 1 additional new case. But here we are in a situation where we find it necessary to extend the state of emergency until the 31st of December 2021. Are we no longer relying on the scientific details to confirm if the length of time being proposed might actually be excessive, given the reduction in cases recently, or do we not trust the numbers as it relates to the reduction in cases? Yes, other Caribbean islands have implemented state of emergencies for 6 months period. And if we are relying on their actions to justify our decision, why have we not referred to the expediency with which these Caribbean islands, in very deliberate and decisive decision-making, without hesitancy, implemented their state of emergency. How do we reconcile with the public the delay in implementing a state of emergency as early as the Whit weekend, when we had our community clusters, considering our actions of last year? Now, Mr. Speaker, another important consideration must be made for the economic impact that a state of emergency will have. Now, in terms of visitor perception, have we considered all the economic ramifications of the SOE in conjunction with, as our learned AG said, the proposed reopening of tourism, CPL and Culturama? I really think, Mr. Speaker, that a state of emergency, the priority ought to be the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, not the proposed events of St. Kitts and Nevis. Further, do you really think that Kittitians care about CPL and Culturama and events? Is this a strong enough motivation for people who are hungry? Is this a reason that learned politicians should stand in this house and say, let's have a state of emergency so we can manage the situation so that we can get back to Culturama? Not let's have a state of emergency so that we can feed? The government did not know. So perhaps the AG should have taken time in his presentation to explain the delayed action, explain the switch from the Public Health Act to the Emergency Powers Act. That is his role, but I will not allow his poor presentation to make me digress from mine. Has the science, according to NIAC, proposed 6 months, 12 months, or 3 months? What's the justification behind the timing? Additionally, what is the science telling us now in terms of the data that has been collected? What is it saying to us? Last year, when we extended the state of emergency in October till December, I recall the member for number 8 in his justification for the resolution saying, well, you know, it's going to be business as usual. Well, if it's business as usual, what is the need for the state of emergency first, 2021? Now, the mere fact that we can have varying positions for both islands, both St. Kitts and Nevis, it is the same way that we must appreciate that each island, St. Kitts and Nevis, each country, St. Lucia, Barbados, will act in accordance to measures which are suitable for them. So coming here and telling us that 4 other Caribbean islands extended a state of emergency for 6 months, really? That is a justification for our action? They did it, so we are going to do it? Their numbers are different to ours. Their situation is different to ours. And as of now, nobody who spoke on the government side has really justified and substantiated the extension of the state of emergency for 6 months. So explain to the people the need for extending the SOE in spite of the decline in cases over the past couple days and in spite of the 24-hour lockdown that we will be facing for the next week. Why can't we wait to see the effects of the lockdown to determine if we need to call cabinet here for another emergency sitting? This was so difficult to do, to come here, to put people first. We are so busy that it's going to be so problematic to come back here in the next 6 months to discuss the state of emergency. So I really was excited about coming here this morning because I felt like Barbados, we would also have some indications by someone about the complementary stimulus that would support what's happening now, about the small businesses that have been affected for the past 2 weeks. Not the big businesses, you know, not the supermarkets, you know, because they have been able to manage. Now, we are here, state of emergency, deal with that. You're hungry, deal with that. You have no jobs, deal with that. How is that a caring government? How is that a government which recognizes that people in this country can read and write and can analyze for themselves? What really is the recommendation of the NEOC? I think that's the most important question here. And when did they provide the recommendations for the state of emergency? Was it Friday evening, just before the Prime Minister's national address? Was it the weekend of Whit Monday? When every sensible resident in St. Kitts-Nevis was begging and clamoring for a lockdown, this infallible government, who has never made a mistake, decided 11 p.m., then 8 p.m., then 6 p.m., now 24-hour lockdown, because clearly people in St. Kitts do not understand the gravity of the situation. Why then did they beg for a lockdown since a month ago? And we are waiting now 3-4 weeks after with delayed action. According to the AG, we will remain restricted until enough people have vaccinated. Now, so we are not engaging in restrictions to save lives, and there is only one measure to save life in St. Kitts-Nevis: vaccination. Thank you for the information, Mr. AG, but that is suggesting that our priority right now is vaccination to open up our economy and not saving lives. We can open our country, we can open our economy, but if people have become so dead broke, so hungry and disadvantaged, they will not be able to effectively participate in CPL, Culturama, nor any of the proposed events which are governing our current actions at the moment. Now I have to spend a few minutes talking about politicization, because as a young politician, parliamentarian, whatever it is, I am utterly disappointed, but who cares? But I'm going to say it. It is quite ironic, Mr. Speaker, that we are here to support this motion on the basis of not being political when this administration, at the helm of the most unfortunate disaster facing our country, has resorted to name, blame, and shame. That is your modus operandi. Name, blame, shame. Name, blame, shame. It's a scenario which is being played out in public and social media, and shamefully, because of the actions of the Prime Minister right here in Parliament. How can the leader of our federation be so compelled to come and speak about the politicization of the management of COVID-19 by blaming the opposition and naming us as anti-vaxxers, which we are not? And why was not he compelled to withdraw that statement? Anyways, I digress. When our leader, the Prime Minister, the member for number 7, continuously shows that he's suffering from an acute case of Douglasitis, we will not get anywhere, because his only intention is to come into Parliament and name, blame, shame with his Douglas obsession. And what bothers me even more as a young politician is that senior members of his party, members who claim that they too want to be prime ministers of this federation, hang their head in shame instead of saying, let's get on to the matter at hand, saving lives. It is a disappointment and a sad day for St. Kitts-Nevis when an Attorney General and a Prime Minister cannot justify actions which are required to save lives. But continue hanging your head with your Douglas obsession. So, like most people in St. Kitts-Nevis, we have to wonder if this government is collecting political data at vaccination centers. How is it possible that the government knows that Labour is the anti-vax movement and that Labour supporters are not taking the vaccine if they are not indeed collecting information about your political status when you go to vaccinate, instead of collecting information on your age group and your gender and your coexisting morbidities et al. Clearly that is the position of the government. The Labour people did this, and you know what's funny? Labour and PAM people have taken the vaccine. Labour and people have not taken the vaccine. And if Labour lose the government, how is it Labour got so much power to tell people don't take a vaccine? It's ridiculous. Instead of focusing on what you ought to do, you name, you blame, and you shame. Shame on this government. Instead of wasting time creating division and disunity, which is a hallmark of this government, why not invest some time in providing real statistics to the nation? Instead of unnecessarily extending the NIAC briefings for unscripted, regrettable speeches, help the nation by providing more data. For example, we say we do not want to alarm the public, yet we announce a 24-hour lockdown on a Friday night, giving the nation of some 40,000 individuals a 24-hour period to organize for a 3-hour lockdown, and this is a caring government. This is the action of a caring government, and clearly no concern for the Seventh-day Adventists in our nation. Guess they didn't have to prepare. So we will implement. How about this, for example, for our learned communicators? We will implement a 3-phase approach to the management of this crisis. Curfews, extensions, and possibly a 24-hour lockdown if things don't go our way. But this government loves to panic nigga, love to send people in a crisis. They love to see the long line saying, yes, massa, we run into the supermarket now. Then you come and you chastise people for wanting to feed their children. You speak very condescendingly to people, telling them who should have sense and who shouldn't have common sense. And this is the action of a caring government. So, as someone with a little bit of disaster management knowledge, why haven't we even mobilized the NEMA volunteers to be part of this response mechanism? There are a number of questions that people have, you know. Remember, in this pandemic, it is a global situation. But in St. Kitts and Nevis, we are not responsible for responding to the global disaster. The onus is on the government to respond to the disaster locally. So our responses must be cultural and specific to us here as a people. To suggest, Mr. Speaker, that your actions are perfect, excellent. It's a ridiculous notion given the situation we are in now. If our actions were so responsible and perfect, would we have 429 cases today? Greater countries with more finances and more expertise have made mistakes. So how is it this infallible government here wants to say to us that they no make no mistake, that everything was excellent, that we are wrong as people of St. Kitts to question the actions of the government and those charged with managing the disaster? All right, yes, massa, you are perfect. Yes, massa, everything you did is right. Yes, massa, we are wrong. Is for this big stick mentality? So let's talk about education. But I remind you that now that we are trying to lock the stable door, know that the horses have bolted, and we are so upset with anyone, with the opposition, for questioning as a means to improve the management of the situation. Or do we not need an opposition anymore? People, lives, and education, they all matter. So it's another year, another undiscussed, haphazard, unguided approach to closure of schools. Last year, when we closed schools after one case, and I came here and I said, we need a plan A, we need a plan B, we need a mechanism which adequately responds to educating our students. Oh, this is not the time. You're going to have the opportunity in the budget address. And then I wanted to speak again of the impacts of COVID on small people. This is not the time. This is controversial. When is ever the time to speak about issues which matter to people? When is ever the time to tell the government you did this, okay, but you can do that? By nature of being a Labour supporter, my ideas are ridiculous and unwelcome because I am a Labour. Ridiculous! This is not forward thinking. This is not a government which cares. This is not a government which understands that it too can make mistakes, has made mistakes, and need to engage in some form of redress, especially for the hungry people who have been in quarantine up to 3 weeks without support. So thank you, social services, for now providing support. And thank you to EK and everybody else who do something, because none of we in here do nothing. Absolutely nothing. But talk and frat, huff and puff. Anyways. This nothing new to address the digital divide that students now face. So I'm very grateful that those parents who completed that form a year ago, 15 months ago, to indicate whether or not they had a device, did so, and that the ministry was able to distribute over 1,200 laptops to students and another 1,000 plus to teachers. Congratulations. But guess what? Instead of naming, blaming, and shaming the parents who did not complete that form last year, the ministry, led by the Minister of Education, has yet to assist the additional 7,000 students who face some form of challenge in bridging the digital divide. Oh, me pause because I wanted somebody to tell me I was wrong. Okay. Really? If you're not, take me on how you know I'm speaking. Blaming parents, blaming students is regrettable. And that is all that the ministry does. Now, since members opposite want to rehash the deep past with the Douglas obsession and the Douglas itis that they really need to go and see a medical doctor for, so you might have to offer them your services so they can figure out how to get over you. Well, because they're obsessed. I imagine here why some people would be wondering, hey, why didn't this really sensible, infallible government, why did they end the laptop program? Let me go back deep into the archives. Why did the former Minister of Education end the laptop program? I thought you said you're not taking good. Why you end the laptop program? We would be here because this is a government which loves to boast about non-entities, and we could have boasted about being the only country in the Caribbean which is now moving towards distributing devices to preschoolers, because we have been taking care of the CFB students and the secondary students and the primary school students. This is where we would have been 6 years after. But where are we? End a good program because it was initiated by the Labour Party, and do not provide any response to address the digital divide beyond a measly 1,200 laptops. Now, you would think that in such a dire crisis, which requires a state of emergency to be extended for 6 months, that this government in the cabinet meetings would be able to, after the cabinet meetings, would be able to come in here, huff and puff till the belly busts, and say, hey, we have moved funds from this capital project to an education capital project because we recognize the importance of getting students ready for CXC. Last evening I had a phone call from a parent. My child is doing EDPM outside of the school. She has been told that she needs to take a device. She doesn't have a device. I'm going to give her mine. But I understand the challenge here because these devices are supposed to be wiped and this and that, and what do I do? It's a work device. Parent, please, give your child the device and let her go to the exam. But you know what's striking for me? That These parents will now call and say to me, I know the important things might not be what I'm about to say to you, but why is it my child got up at 6 a.m. this morning to get ready for an exam, a CXA exam, which we all knew the date for weeks. An exam which was scheduled to start at 9, which started 11:15. And at 2 o'clock, hungry belly still in exam, writing exam. And everybody who did that exam knows what hungry belly does to you when you're trying to pass a test. And we had weeks to prepare. That's all I'm saying. That there are loopholes, that we are not perfect in what we are doing. So don't come here and tell nobody that your management was excellent. If it was case 46, 47, anyway, and that would have been it. But it wasn't. We're at case 429. People matter. Let's remember that whenever we make decisions that disrupt people's lives, we have to think about whether we're ethical and whether it's effective. Some 15 months ago, I reiterate, we shut down government schools on the announcement of one imported case. Months after, with wide-scale community spread, students still don't have devices. We have not created a situation where students can even access the internet on their mobile phones because of a zero-rated data program with the telecommunication providers. Yes, we have put internet in community centers. We have tried to put internet in schools. It's still failing. We have so many options. If only this government was caring enough to listen and not name, blame, and shame. People have to eat. You know how many, I saw a parent one time I was shopping and she said, my child gets up at 2 a.m. to study, hungry, and he eats 4 eggs at a time. And he goes back and he eats, and I cannot wrong my child for eating. But Dr. Clarke, when I cannot provide the food for the child, what do I do? Why is this government telling me to fast and pray? Why is this government so condescending and uncaring and haughty, as if they do not recognize that people are suffering? Parents who are now out of work are messaging, when will we know our students' decisions? When will we know what books to buy? How can we afford it? We didn't qualify for the SELF program last year. This year we may not qualify, but we have no money. What will we do? Had these questions been managed, then these parents would not feel so left out to dry. Students who are suffering. I think I need to remind this government that it is not almighty, all-powerful, and omniscient. Clearly if everyone loved this government, we would not be struggling with buy-in and support. How can it be the fault of the opposition when people voted for you? It means that you clearly do not have the love and support of the people. It is clearly not unwavering and unquestionable. Our people would not be in the positions they are in at this point in time. And so from a young politician, grow up politically, become more feeling and caring about the individuals that you have been placed here to govern. What is a shame in St. Kitts-Nevis is that for a small island with so many divisions, country and tongue, country and back of the land, as this Prime Minister loves to bring up, we now have to come in here with another division based on government utterings, vaccinated and unvaccinated. It's crazy. It's embarrassing for a small country that wants to boast about being first in everything. Now, the leadership of St. Kitts-Nevis has to resign themselves to this unfortunate and disheartening reality. Perhaps Perhaps it is time for a real emergency sitting to address failing leadership provided by the member for number 7, and perhaps give all those who have been claiming they're going to be the next leader the opportunity to just lead now and really manage from a place of caring. Just lead now. Stand up for what's right for St. Kitts-Nevis. Stand up for the people in your constituencies. Recognize that you have not done everything perfectly. Think of people and the impacts on their lives, and stop blaming the opposition. Stop blaming the unvaccinated. Stop punishing people. We got a call just recently about taxi drivers who have been through the same protocols that the AG mentioned, but has a contract revoked because he's not vaccinated. Now you tell me, how is that a country which says it's not going to be divisive? It is not going to punish workers for not taking a vaccine. Yet people are calling and complaining about how they are treated in the Ministry of Tourism. Now, for the sake of all residents in the Federation, provide a stimulus which works. It is irresponsible and uncaring to extend without a health, economic, and educational outlook. By now, the Ministry of Education should have been able to communicate to administrators, who would then communicate to the administrators at the school level, that we are implementing Plan B of our phased response to COVID-19. And every teacher, parent, and student and guardian would have known that Plan B means to do A, B, C, D. Not every day we have to figure out, what do we do? Wait until Sunday afternoon for a briefing for students who are taking CXC exams Monday morning. How is that a sensible move? How is that a government led by a minister? How is that an education ministry led by somebody with sense? How is that? Common sense. How is that? How do we continuously fail our students and parents and teachers, and then come to the house to John and Jackie like nobody in here could talk other than you? Nobody in here has an opinion other than the government. Nobody in here can recommend that the Ministry of Education need to just done the crap, provide laptops for every student and teacher, move on to Plan B, and make sure that everything that we do down to digital, down to marking and recording of marks and providing parents with their report card this term is digitized. 15 months. And the Ministry of Education has failed the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And I look forward to the minister coming up and saying, well, I did not plan to respond, but I'm going to respond now. Come and give me the same statistics. So let me give them to you now. I have time. We did a form and we sent it out to the students, and 1,200 people said they wanted, and we helped them. And we put internet in some homes, and we continue to help. Nothing new will be provided here today to address the situation of the digital divide. And that's what happens with parliamentarians who don't care. They come to debate a very crucial bill, the state of emergency, with no plan to debate it, but as soon as they see the nature of their obsession, the leader of the opposition begin to speak. Oh, you're going to have to respond. You're going to have to say something. I wasn't planning to say something, but I'm going to say something because you do not care about the implications that passing some of these bills have on the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Need I remind the government that this fight is not with the opposition. It is not with the supporters of the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party. It is not with Dr. Douglas. It is not with the unvaccinated. It is with COVID-19. Aim correctly in your response to this pandemic. Put people first. Put lives first. Put students first. And exercise compassion. Now, if somebody cares to really explain the need for the extension of the state of emergency based on data from NIAC, we would be most happy to lend our support. But what are we supporting the state of emergency for? Because the AG presented that he's a competent AG because he was able to win some case about a passport. Because, and guess what? A passport, which was a case of victimization anyways, but I move on. And then we move on. And this AG is competent because he was able to get the Prime Minister out of the Parliament. And so because he was able to do those things, one must trust in his decision-making to extend the state of emergency for 6 months. No data, no analysis. Nobody has said the NIAC recommends this. The chair of the Disaster Management Agency recommends this. Nobody, but we are here because we need to vaccinate and we need to manage people. Make it clear that the opposition doctors are anti-vax. And we are to vote on this decision today. And the people of St. Kitts and Nevis are supposed to tomorrow say, congratulations, unity government, you are here and you care for us. I end by repeating what I started with. This government has a serious case of Douglas-itis. And we dare not be led by a leader who is unilateral in his vision. He sees one thing, Douglas, and nothing else. He does not see country. We are here for a state of emergency with no plan for tourism. Again. With no plan for education. Again. With reactionary plans to support people in quarantine. We are here to extend a state of emergency when this Prime Minister will come and say, it is Douglas' fault. That's ridiculous. We have nothing to boast about here. Nothing, absolutely nothing to boast about unless we get our bearings correct. Extending a state of emergency to 6 months will have ethical, economic, and educational impacts. And if ministers are responsible, they would have prepared to speak today about tourism, education, health, the economy. Instead, they spoke about Douglas. And so the people of St. Kitts and Nevis will take away from this emergency sitting that the state of emergency has been put in place because Douglas failed to support the government. Because Douglas is anti-vaccine. Because Labour people aren't taking their vaccines. Because we need to have CPL and Culturama. Not that. We need to support small businesses. A man who don't cut weed in somebody's yard need to work too, he need to eat. No, we are here about Douglas. We hear it at the NIAC briefings, we hear it in Parliament, we hear it on social media. When will it end? When will this government correct its wrongs? I forgot. Massa is all-powerful and infallible. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Senator Opposite, Dr. Joyelle Clarke. I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 5, Sean Richards.